Hello everyone and welcome back. This is a channel about self-development, transformation and questioning the beliefs you've never thought to question so you can grow into a more healed, more grounded version of yourself. That's what we do here. Today I want to talk about something that has become almost a personality type online, and that's being high maintenance. And more specifically, the way it's been repackaged from an insult into a badge of honor, almost a status symbol. If you spend any time on social media, you will have seen it. The captions, the audios, the whole aesthetic built around the idea that being high maintenance means that you know your worth. That requiring effort, expensive dates, gifts, and a man who pays for everything is proof that you value yourself. And it sounds empowering, like a reclamation of something, but hear me out. When you think about it, when you look at what's underneath the performance, it starts to look a lot less like self-worth and a lot more like something else entirely. Here's what I keep noticing. A significant part of this trend isn't really about standards, it's about superiority. And that's the part I want to talk about today. The underlying message isn't just, oh, I know what I deserve. It's more the case of, I'm better than the women who accept less. Or it's the case of, a man spending money on me is proof of my value. Being provided for is what separates me from the rest. And that's a very different thing. Genuine self-worth, in my opinion, does not need an audience. It doesn't need to be performed online, and it definitely doesn't need to be validated by how much someone spends on you. When the proof of your value is externally located in what one pays for or provides, in that scenario would be a man, what he's willing to do to keep you, you're not operating from self-worth. I promise you're not. You're operating from the same place we've been talking about on this channel all along. You're still waiting for someone else to confirm that you're enough. You're still waiting for someone else to basically validate you. And I want to be honest here because I understand where this comes from. There's a legitimate conversation underneath all of this that gets completely lost behind the performance. Women have historically carried an enormous amount within relationships, whether that's emotional labor, the mental load, the career sacrifices that come with having children, and then obviously you have the physical and psychological weight of pregnancy and childbirth. These are absolutely valid. These are real, no joke. And the frustration behind I'm not doing all of that for someone who can't even pick up the bill. Again, it's valid. I get it. No one wants an imbalanced relationship. Again, I get it. It comes from watching it happen to mothers, to friends, maybe to yourself in previous relationships. And I have been there in my own thinking. There was a point where I thought performing high maintenance online would be useful like a filter. Like if I made it clear early on that I required effort, then the low effort men would just remove themselves and, save us both time. But here's what I actually came to realize. Your actions do that work. What you tolerate, what you walk away from, the standards you hold consistently, that's what filters. Not performance, not a caption, not making sure everyone online knows that you don't go Dutch. The women who are clearest on their standards tend to be the quietest about them. Usually, anyway. So let's talk about the fear underneath this. Why is ending up with a 50-50 man treated as an actual fear? And I'm not asking that dismissively, I'm asking it seriously. Because the fact that it registers as a fear rather than just a preference tells us something really important. A preference is usually, oh, this doesn't work for me and I won't accept it. That's clean. That's boundaries. Pretty self-aware. A fear, on the other hand, is something different. A fear means that you're not entirely sure you'd be strong enough to leave. That you might end up there anyway despite everything, that the alternative, which will be, being alone or starting over, not being chosen, whatever, feels worse than settling for something that doesn't work for you. And if that's what's underneath it, if the high maintenance performance is partly about making sure you never end up somewhere you wouldn't have the strength to leave, that's a different story entirely. And that's the issue that you need to work on. Not to be broadcasting your high standards on the internet for everyone. The answer is actually building the foundation internally so that you can walk away from the wrong thing and it feels like the real option, the only real option, not the terrifying one. And there's the part of this conversation that I find most interesting. Why does it always come back to men? The whole framework, being high maintenance, being provided for, being valued enough for someone to spend on you, it is entirely constructed around male approval. That is the matrix. It's entirely constructed around male approval as the matrix, and his willingness to pay is the proof. His investment would play the role of obviously your validation. His choice to provide is what confirms your worth in that scenario, which means that underneath all the empowerment language, you've like basically handed him the position of judge again. You have made his behavior the one thing that tells you whether you're valuable, and that's not a power position to be in. That's the oldest dynamic in the book dressed up in basically new packaging. Real financial independence, real security, real self-worth, none of these things require a man to demonstrate them back to you. They can exist whether he shows up or not, if you do the work, if you're willing to do the work and you face it. And here's something else that I also want to mention. When you broadcast your price, when your whole identity online is built around what you require and what you won't accept, you make it like you don't just filter out low effort men, you also hand a manual to the ones who are willing to study you. There are men, genuinely, who will read exactly what you said you need and will perform it precisely. They will use it as a strategy, not because they value you, but because they've identified what it takes to get access. And that is a real threat, in my opinion. You have made it easy for them to take advantage of you, to play you the way they want to play you, whether that's fair or not. And the louder and more specific the performance, the easier you've made that job for them. The women with the clearest and quietest boundaries are actually far harder to manipulate than the ones broadcasting their requirements online. That's the thing that can flip the power dynamic to give you a fair chance. Because there's no manual, there's just a woman who knows what she'll walk away from, and follows through. And she does it, she walks away. And there's also this belief that keeps circulating online that men invest in what they care about. And if he's spending on you, it means that you're valued. That 5-10K transfer, whatever, the expensive gifts, the dinners, these are signals of how much you mean to him. And look, there is a version of that is probably true to an extent. A man who prioritizes your security and consistently shows up financially can easily be demonstrating something real, but it is nowhere near as simple as it gets made out to be. Because there are men out there for whom £5,000 or £10,000 or dollars is genuinely pocket money, just loose change, and a man they wouldn't think twice about. And for that man, sending it to you makes you no different from the other girls on the roster. The other girls on his roster receiving the exact same gifts, the exact same dinners, the exact same transfers this week. The gesture only signals value if it costs him something, and you often won't know what that is and which category you're in until much later. So using a man's financial investment as your primary indicator of how much he values you specifically, especially without knowing what the amount actually means to him, is a very shaky foundation to build anything on. And it's still approval seeking. It's still making his behavior the proof of your worth. The fact that he's, let's say, wealthy doesn't change that dynamic. It just makes it easier to, dress up as something else. So what's the alternative? It's definitely not to lower your standards. It's not to go Dutch if that's not what you want, if it doesn't feel right to you, or to accept less than what you want in a relationship. It's to separate your standards from, your need for them to be seen. Know what you want, know what you'll accept, know what you walk away from. Sit down and really think about these things. Write stuff down if you need to, and make a list. And then let your choice speak, not your captions, not what you post online. Because a woman who is genuinely secure in her worth doesn't usually need to perform it. She doesn't need him or a man to pay for dinner to know she's valuable. She doesn't need a man's provision to confirm her status. She already knows. And that knowing is usually quiet, solid, not up for debate. And I think that's more attractive and powerful than any performance of high maintenance has ever been. The question I want to leave you with this week is, are your standards something that you live by or something you just perform? And let's say if you stripped away everything external, everything that your partner, let's say, pays for or provides, or what he's willing to do, would you still know your own worth? In fact, would you even still like them? Do you like this man? Because if the answer is no, that's where the work actually is. Not in finding a man that proves it to you, in building it for yourself, so you don't need him to do that. Knowing what you want and just living by it. So yeah, this is it from me for today. Do let me know your thoughts in the comments as usual. What's your experience? If you've had a high maintenance friend, if you have ever been in that mindset yourself, or if you currently are in it, how does that work for you? Genuine question, would love to know. But yeah, I shall see you in the next video.